The first time I saw her, she was standing by the open garage door, light spilling across her like it didn't know where else to go. The afternoon sun hit the edge of her hair, streaked the way she'd brush her hair behind her ear when she thought no one was looking. Sometimes she'd hum an old song, something from before I was born, and I'd slow my work just to listen. Her name was Evelyn. It suited her, elegant but used, like a book that had been read too many times and kept anyway. One evening, the rain came without warning. Her husband had already left to pick up a part from the city, and she stayed behind, claiming she needed to lock up. I was under a car, hands black with oil, when she said softly, "You shouldn't work this late. People might start to think you live here." I slid out from under the car, grinning. "Maybe I do. Cheaper rent." She smiled, the kind that doesn't last but lingers in your chest. Then silence, the kind that hums between two people who both know they should look away but don't. The rain grew heavier. It hit the metal roof like it was trying to warn us. She walked closer, hesitating with every step. I could smell her perfume, faint floral, mixed with the scent of rain-soaked dust. "You're good at what you do," she said, eyes tracing the grease on my forearms. "The customers like you. My husband, he says you remind him of himself when he still cared." Her voice faltered on the last word. I wiped my hands on a rag, trying to steady something inside me. "And what about you?" She blinked, not expecting it. "What about me? Do I remind you of anyone?" She didn't answer, just looked at me for a long, breaking second, like she was searching for something she'd already lost. The rain eased, but the quiet that followed was worse. She moved toward the counter, fingers trembling slightly as she reached for her keys. "You're too young to ask questions like that," she murmured, half smiling, half scared. "Maybe," I said, "but you didn't say no." The lights flickered once. A car passed outside, slow and distant. She glanced at the clock, then at me. There was something unspoken there, something neither of us had permission to name. She stepped closer again, just enough that I could see the tiny scar along her jawline. "You should go home," she whispered, though her eyes didn't move from mine. "I will," I said, "when you tell me to." Her lips parted, but no words came. Then the doorbell chimed, sharp, sudden, cutting through everything. She froze. Her hand dropped to her side, and all the warmth in the room seemed to pull away. Through the rain-blurred glass, a shadow stood at the entrance, still, waiting. And just like that, whatever was about to happen stopped. But the look she gave me before turning away said one thing clearly: this wasn't over. The man at the door that night had just been a customer, picking up his car early, nothing more. But the moment passed like a cut you don't notice until it stings later. Evelyn barely looked at me when he left. She just said, "Lock up," and walked out into the rain without an umbrella. For days after, things between us felt quieter. The kind of quiet that isn't peace, it's a holding pattern. I'd catch her watching me from the office window, her expression unreadable. Once, she turned away so fast her hair brushed the glass. I told myself I was imagining it. One afternoon, while I was fixing the brake pads on an old pickup, she came in carrying 2 mugs of coffee. Her hands were shaking just slightly. I could see the ripple on the surface of the drink. "Decaf," she said, placing one on the workbench. "I stopped drinking the real stuff years ago. Makes my heart race. Maybe that's not such a bad thing," I said before thinking. Her laugh was quiet, a single breath. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" "I'm learning," I murmured, taking the mug. Slowly, she leaned against the counter. "You remind me of someone. My son's age, maybe a year older." There was the line. Not said as a warning, just dropped into the air like she was testing what it might do to me. "You have a son?" I asked, keeping my tone easy. "Had," she corrected softly. "He left last year. College, far away. The house has been quiet." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. The silence between us felt heavier than the humid air. Her husband, Mark, was a good man by reputation. Everyone in town said so. He'd built this garage from nothing. But I'd seen the way his voice hardened when he talked to her. The way she flinched when he laughed too loud. One evening, after closing, I stayed late again. The lights were low, the radio low enough to be mistaken for memory. Evelyn walked in, no makeup, hair tied back. She looked younger that way, or maybe just more herself. "I thought you'd gone home," she said. "I was about to." I lied. She nodded slowly. "You always say that." I wiped my hands on a towel, avoiding her gaze. "You always find a reason to come back." That made her pause. She took a step closer, and the scent of her shampoo, clean, faintly citrus, replaced the smell of oil and metal. "I shouldn't be here," she said. "Then go," I whispered. Her eyes flicked up, meeting mine, and for the first time, she didn't look away. The clock ticked once, twice. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. And then, so small it could have been an accident, her fingers brushed the back of my hand. It wasn't long. It wasn't enough. But it was everything. She pulled away first, her breath uneven. "Good night," she said, voice low. When she walked out, I looked down at my hand. The grease had smudged where she'd touched it, and I didn't wipe it off. The next few days felt wrong in all the ways that felt right. Evelyn avoided me, but only half successfully. Her shadow lingered in every corner I worked in. Her perfume clung to the office chair, and her coffee mug stayed by the sink like proof of a secret no one had confessed yet. I told myself to stop thinking about her. But the truth is, I waited for her. Every morning, every creak of the front door, every echo of her footsteps. Then Mark came back early one afternoon. He walked into the garage with that heavy gait, loud, claiming space. His shirt was half-buttoned, eyes bloodshot, smelling faintly of bourbon and heat. Evelyn trailed behind him, quiet, polite. I tried not to look, but I could feel her gaze skimming my face for any reaction. "Kid," Mark said, clapping my shoulder hard enough to make me drop the wrench. "You've been keeping my wife entertained while I'm gone?" I froze. Evelyn's breath hitched. He was joking, but not really. "Just fixing cars," I said. "That's all I do." He grinned. "Good answer." Then to her, "See, honey? Honest hands." She smiled thinly and turned away, but her fingers gripped the edge of the desk until her knuckles whitened. That evening, when Mark finally left for a supply run, I found her sitting alone in the office. The blinds were half closed, light slicing through the room like confession lines. "You shouldn't let him talk to you like that," I said. She didn't turn around. "He doesn't mean it." "Yeah, he does." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know him. I know you flinch when he raises his voice." That made her stand. "You shouldn't be watching me that closely." "Then stop being impossible not to watch." Silence. Then a laugh that wasn't really laughter. "You're just a boy who doesn't know when to leave things alone." "Maybe," I said, stepping closer, "but you haven't asked me to." She turned, eyes wet but steady. For a second, the space between us disappeared, like the air forgot how to separate two people. Her hand lifted, hesitated midair, then fell. "If you touch me, everything breaks," she whispered. "Then tell me to stop wanting to." Her lips parted, but before she could speak, headlights flared through the garage window. Mark's truck. Early. Evelyn's face went pale. "Go," she said, pushing me toward the back door. "Now." I stumbled out into the night, heart hammering, the smell of motor oil and her perfume still tangled in my shirt. From the alley, I watched as Mark stepped inside. She met him with a practiced smile, steady voice, the picture of calm. But as she turned to close the blinds, her eyes flicked once toward the back door, where I stood. It wasn't long. It wasn't safe. But it was enough to say what we couldn't. Neither of us was ready to stop. It had been 2 weeks since that night in the alley, but I hadn't stopped replaying it. Her hand pushing me out, her eyes saying stay. The garage carried her silence now. She came in less, spoke less. Every word between us had weight, like we were both afraid to drop it and shatter everything. One evening, Mark called in sick. "Lock up when you're done," he told me over the phone, coughing into the receiver. Evelyn's car was still outside when I turned the lights off. I told myself to leave. Instead, I found her sitting in the office again, the lamp painting her face in warm gold and tired shadows. "You didn't go home," I said quietly. "Neither did you," she replied without looking up. She was reading a receipt, but her fingers trembled. The paper crinkled. "Mark's not well," she said finally. "Doctors think it's his heart. He's been different." There was something in her voice, guilt, maybe, or something worse. I stepped closer, unsure if I was helping or making it harder. "You still love him?" She looked up, eyes glinting with something that could have been anger. "Don't ask me that. I need to know." "You think this is simple," she snapped, standing now. "You think I can just—" Her words caught. She pressed a hand to her forehead, exhaled shakily. "You're too young to understand the mess love becomes when you stay too long. Understand what it's like to want something you shouldn't," I said, voice low. That broke her composure. She looked at me, really looked, and the exhaustion in her face softened into something dangerous. "I used to think I'd stop feeling things like this," she whispered. "Then you showed up, and suddenly I'm 20 again and reckless." "Maybe you were never done being that," I said. She took one step toward me, then another. The air thickened. I could feel her pulse in the space between us. "If we do this," she said, "it ruins everything." "Maybe everything's already cracked," I replied. Her breath hitched, that small, helpless sound people make right before they stop pretending. For a heartbeat, we stood inches apart, neither of us moving, both caught in the gravity of a choice we hadn't made yet. Then the phone rang. Loud, sharp, relentless. She flinched, backing away as if waking from a trance. "It's him," she said, voice trembling. "It's Mark." I stood frozen, the sound of the ringing cutting through my chest. She reached for the receiver, but stopped halfway. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered. "Like what?" "Like you already know I'm going to answer." The phone kept ringing. Her hand hovered over it, torn between the life she had and the one she wasn't supposed to want. And then, finally, she lifted it, just as I turned to leave, her voice breaking behind me. "Mark," she said. A pause, and whatever she heard on the other end made her knees buckle. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Her voice saying his name, the sound of it cracking in half. It played over and over in my head like an unfinished confession. The next morning, the garage stayed closed. The sign still hung, but the door was locked. I waited an hour in my truck before I finally saw her. Evelyn stepped out of a black sedan, wearing the same clothes as the night before. Her hair was unbrushed. Her eyes were swollen, raw. She didn't see me at first. I got out quietly, but when she turned and noticed, her face shifted. Not surprise, not relief, just exhaustion. "Mark had a heart attack," she said flatly. "They're keeping him at County General." My stomach dropped. "Is he alive?" she cut in. "Barely. They said stress, mostly. Overwork." The words fell heavy between us. Stress. The kind that comes from suspicion, silence, from things you almost said. "Does he know?" I asked before I could stop myself. Evelyn blinked. "Know what?" "That there's something between us." Her eyes hardened, and for the first time, she looked at me like I'd betrayed her. "Don't say that here." "Why not?" "It's the truth." "No," she said firmly. "It's a mistake. That hit harder than it should have." "You didn't think it was a mistake when—" "Don't," she interrupted, voice shaking. "Don't rewrite this into something it wasn't." I wanted to argue, to pull her back to that night when her fingers brushed mine and everything changed. But then she opened her purse, pulled out a folded sheet of paper, and held it out. "He knows, Jake." The words froze me. "What?" "I think he followed me that night. He found your name in his phone log, the garage line. He thought I was having an affair." Her hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. It was a printed email, half-finished, unsent. To Jake Turner, subject: "About my wife, if you think you can play games with my family." The rest of the text was cut off, like he'd stopped mid-sentence. "He was writing this when it happened," she said quietly. "Before the heart attack." I stared at the paper. The edges were crumpled, stained with oil or maybe sweat. "So what happens now?" I asked. She laughed once, a hollow sound. "Now, you leave." You disappear before he wakes up and decides he wants to finish that message. I can't just walk away from you. You have to. Her voice broke, and that was worse than shouting. He could have died thinking I betrayed him. I can't let that be true. She stepped back, tears cutting through the grime on her face. You were never supposed to matter this much. I took a step toward her, but she shook her head. Please, she whispered, don't make this harder. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed in her hand. A hospital number. She pressed it to her ear, listening in silence, then turned away, shoulders trembling. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost gone. He's awake, she said, and then she looked at me, not with love, not with anger, but with something worse. Goodbye. Hospitals smell like metal and lemon disinfectant, the kind of clean that hides everything real underneath. I shouldn't have gone, but I did. I parked 3 blocks away and walked. Every step felt like an argument with myself. When I reached his room, the door was half open. Evelyn sat by his bedside, her hand resting on his arm, still in her work clothes. Mark was awake, pale, quiet, wired to too many machines. He didn't look at her when he spoke. I checked the shop logs, he said, voice rasping. Your new guy's been working a lot of late nights. Evelyn didn't answer. Funny thing, he went on, I'd almost think he was waiting for someone. I should have turned around. I didn't. I pushed the door open, and both of them looked up at once. Mark's eyes sharpened like a blade, finding its edge. There he is, he said. The good kid. My wife's favorite mechanic. Evelyn rose instantly. Mark, stop! But he wasn't shouting. His voice stayed soft. Too soft. I trusted you, he said to her. Both of you. I swallowed hard. Nothing happened, I said. He gave a small, humorless laugh. You think I care about that? You looked at her like I used to. That's worse. Evelyn turned to him, tears forming. You stopped looking, Mark. You stopped seeing me. For a moment, the machines filled the silence. Then he closed his eyes, maybe from pain, maybe from shame. She stepped closer to me, not touching, just near enough that I could feel the pull. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. I had to be, I said. I needed you to know that I meant it. All of it. Her breath shook. You think meaning fixes anything? No, I said quietly. But maybe truth does. Mark opened his eyes again. Truth, he muttered. Tell me one that doesn't hurt. Evelyn turned toward him. I never stopped loving you, she said, voice trembling, but I forgot how to feel it until he reminded me what being alive was like. It broke something in the room, a silence too deep to repair. Mark didn't answer. He just stared at the ceiling, the monitors beeping in rhythm with a heart that had already endured too much. Evelyn looked back at me, tears spilling now. You have to go, she said softly. Please, Jake, before I forget how to let you. I nodded. There was nothing left to say. As I turned to leave, she caught my wrist, just for a heartbeat. Her fingers were cold. You were better with your hands, she whispered. You just chose the wrong heart. And then she let go. Outside, the sun was rising, the color of rust and new beginnings. I walked until the hospital disappeared behind me, until her voice faded into memory. We had broken everything, but somehow, in the breaking, we'd seen each other fully, maybe for the first and last time. It's been 8 months since that morning at the hospital. 8 months since I left the garage, the town, and the version of myself that believed love could survive silence. Now I work in another shop, smaller, quieter, somewhere the air smells like dust instead of memory. The days are simple again. Engines, coffee, radio static, the familiar ache in my hands. But sometimes when the light hits just right, I still see her, Evelyn, standing in that garage doorway, pretending she wasn't watching me work. Her voice still comes back in pieces. You're better with your hands. Back then, it sounded like an invitation. Now it feels like a lesson that some things are meant to be felt, not held. A letter came last month. No name, but I knew the handwriting. Mark's recovering. We sold the garage and moved near the coast. He's softer now, maybe because life reminded him how fragile hearts really are. I don't know if I'll ever see you again, but I hope you're still fixing things, even if it's yourself. No signature, just a faint coffee ring in the corner. Her kind of goodbye. I read it once, then folded it carefully and tucked it into my toolbox, next to the wrench she once dropped the day our fingers touched for the first time. The mark is still there, and maybe that's how love really works. It leaves something behind, even when you move on. A week later, a woman stopped by the shop. My age, tired smile, engine knocking like a weak heartbeat. I told her, "Pop the hood," and when she hesitated, I added, "Don't worry. I'm better with my hands." She laughed, small, unsure, but real. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel haunted. Just ready. Maybe love isn't about who stays. Maybe it's about who teaches you how to start over. So if you're still listening, if you've ever held on to something you knew you couldn't keep, if you've ever loved someone who changed you but couldn't stay, then you know how this story feels. Because love doesn't always end in forever. Sometimes it ends in understanding. Red Heart, did you enjoy the story? Backhand index pointing right, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes love can be beautiful even when it breaks. Speech Balloon, tell me in the comments. Do you want more stories that heal, or the ones that still hurt a little? Bell, stay tuned. The next story might just find you.